Awesome. Hey guys, welcome to the movie review for this week. Yeah, you got Carlos here, aka CogCG, CM_Graham1 on Instagram. I'm here with my lovely co-host for the week, Marcus.
That's me. I'm Market Cheese. I'm Marcus. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me on the show, Jim. How are you today?
I'm doing well. We've also got Dylan.
Hi.
This is a lovely fellow.
What up? It's Beefy, aka Ultimate Beefy, aka Mr. Beefy, and it's just Dylan.
Beef all day, baby. Beef all day. Yeah. So, we've got the boys, and today we'll be doing a movie review for the movie Kantara.
Yep.
Now,
This is
Whoa!
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 I honestly, with so much happening with my mic right before this, I will say I don't even want to say whoa too loud. I'm gonna probably just whoa, because it's peaking. It just peaked so hard, and I didn't know. Yeah. Whoa.
Oh, copyrighted music.
It's okay. It's okay. Whoever the editor guy is, yeah, I'm sure he'll.
Marcus.
Fuck you.
I'm
Fuck
sure
you.
he'll be okay with it.
Fuck you. Fuck
It's
you.
okay. Sorry. Yep. Yeah. So today we're doing Kantara review.
Yep.
Basically, if you haven't listened to any of our movie reviews before, the first part's just going to be us going over our initial feelings, our initial ratings for the movie, right? We're just going to give you a general feel of what we thought of the movie, general summary, and just not get into too much detail so that way we don't spoil anything for anybody. And then after we all give our initial reviews and ratings, we'll talk about it. And it will be spoiler filled, so we will let you know beforehand. And then by the end of it, we'll just let you know what our summary is of it all, right?
Yep.
So,
All right. You're number
further
one this
ado.
week, so if you want
Yes,
to start us
sir.
off.
without further ado, so Kantara,
Yep.
I thought this was a very interesting movie.
That is the correct word.
From top to bottom, from start to finish, this movie was interesting. It's honestly, I can say it's nothing like anything I've ever seen before. And there were times in the movie where I'm gonna be unbiased here, guys. Like that was a bad thing at times in the movie, and that was a good thing at times in the movie. Like there was some really interesting. Whoa! All right,
Yeah.
so
Whoa!
there's some. Yes, so the action scenes I thought were honestly great. I thought that the story, I could tell, I could tell that the story had meaning behind it. I could tell that the story was very, like, lore driven. I could tell that the story had, there was a purpose behind it. I feel like I personally at times had lost track of what was happening in the movie or what was the reasons behind it, but I'm hoping that through this conversation with my guys here that we'll all kind of give our inputs from what we found from the movie and be able to help each other figure out or help me fill in the blanks on what I kind of didn't understand, right? So, other than that, I think overall it was a good movie. There were just some parts that I felt were a little long-winded and didn't need to be as long as they were. But other than that, I thought that overall the movie was pretty good. My initial reaction is a 6. It was better than like average. It's exactly average, but one step up from that,
Fair enough.
Yeah, so that's what I gave it.
Okay.
Dylan, did you want to go ahead and you were 2 this week, I believe, right?
No, I was 3.
You were
Yeah.
3? Well, then Marcus, go ahead, bud.
All right, fuck me, I guess. I could be the number 2 poo. All right.
Just give your review.
Sir, just
Okay.
Kantara.
Kantara.
Kantaro.
This was a movie. In a world where we watch movies, I feel I'm panicking. I'm giving a second grade speech all over again. Help, Miss Mackey, help. I don't know what to say.
Whoa.
Okay.
Whoa.
You brought back. All right.
There you
No,
go.
but so to preface this, I want to say I watched this movie. We all watched this movie with subtitles. This movie's originally in Hindi, I think.
Hindi. Yep.
But something that kind of off-put me through it is it's dubbed over in Hindi, I think. That are just like the lip syncing looked like it didn't match. It looked like they purposefully increased the volume of everybody, or they did something where the lips looked like it didn't match, and then there were subtitles. I
definitely felt like it was dubbed over.
Yeah.
Like
It could not
they
be.
went into the studio.
Yeah,
It could not be.
I don't know. Something about it made it feel off, but you got used to it after watching it for a little bit. It just is initially feels kind of strange. Subtitled, some of the emotional parts and some of the like almost joke lighthearted bits don't land as well because it's like I'm reading, so it doesn't
Yeah, it's
it doesn't translate as well in that sense. That being said, I overall had a decent time watching this. The story had good twists. Because for like a while I was just kind of, all right, what's the point? I feel like this movie's just dragging on, but then they hit you with some good plot twists, some real interesting like, oh, okay, the conflict has really taken a turn, and now like the antagonist is really driving the story forward, and I'm starting to like these characters more. They're having a lot more depth, and I feel like this is a format maybe just based off of the two that we've seen, because not to always talk about RRR, but both of these movies seem to have a lot more like time stretched out and things that they're trying to flesh out more. But in some instances, for like this movie, it seems to hurt it more because it just goes on when it could have been like me, how I just keep going on. Anyway, I gave this movie generally a 5 for right now. It's average for me.
Okay. Um. So basically, without getting too detailed into it, this movie was good. I thought it was pretty good and solid. The camera angles were great. A lot of the scenes had that like shaky, constantly moving camera feel. So it made me feel like there was like a live team just like recording the events that was happening. Because there's scenes where they're talking and sitting there, and you see the camera like have that like office effect, I would say. So I did enjoy that. For once, the soundtrack and like the sound design of the movie wasn't good to me. One thing for a movie that always helps is audio.
Yeah.
And music, nothing was really memorable from it. Not even like a lot of the songs.
No.
Even a lot of times too, like just like the overall background soundtrack where there's a fight scene. It was, you don't hear the music, you just hear more of the action that's happening, like wood getting smacked up someone's head, or right. You barely even heard a gunshot, and they were using like muskets and revolvers, and those are relatively loud guns.
Yeah.
So it just felt like the audio and sound design was off. Probably didn't help with like it being dubbed over. And I would say also the only other thing I could take away from this movie is that I genuinely love seeing a more rustic and rural side of India. I always loved the idea of seeing like more villages and everything, as opposed to like, the main city metropolis.
See, I wonder if, like, with all the sound stuff, I wonder if that's just the version that's available to us here, and like, there's better versions that aren't on Netflix or whatever.
Right, and I think that also has something to do with some. I don't know where I was going with it, but basically, yes, I agree with you. Oh, no, I didn't give my number yet, but I'd say that overall, the pacing of the movie also felt off as well. Some parts just felt unnecessarily long and felt like they dragged on and were kind of pointless, while others felt too quick, in my opinion.
Okay.
So, yeah, with all that being considered, I also give it a 5.
Yeah.
It was a good movie. Would I watch it again? No, but...
So, we have everyone's general reviews. It is now time to further discuss everything in depth. You've been warned. Spoiler territory. Yep. We're going to talk about the movie.
Okay. Yes.
All right. Carlos, do you want to give the run through?
Yep. Okay.
Right.
So since I started the spoiler free version, and like I said, I gave it a 6. I thought it was an okay movie. Like I said, it was an average plus 1.
I think you were kind of hazy on like the first introduction. That was like kind of like the 30 minutes part. I can run through that.
So I can also chip in little facts and stuff, because another thing is that if you have no idea about Indian culture or the Hindu pantheon or literally anything about that part of the world, man, they don't explain jack. Like, you have to go into it with a preconceived notion of a lot of their gods and stuff like that too. So that's just a little side thing. It's not
See,
a bad thing, but
and that was one thing while me and Carlos were watching this. I mentioned that because the way that the movie felt, it gave off this vibe of you're expected to know some of this, and then it hits hard because you do. Kind of like, I was like, I wonder if this is like a King Arthur story in the sense of, yes, I know who King Arthur is, and I know the story of it. So when they're doing this telling of it, I'm expecting certain things, and it delivers a certain level of, yes, okay, I understand the back.
Yeah, exactly. Like it should be helping you out, and you know what I mean. Like that preconceived notion that you have of like Indian culture should help you out in a way. And I understand like we're already kind of at a disadvantage going in, but I felt like if you're coming in, I feel like a good movie like that should help you understand it if you're not someone, because that ultimately doesn't allow it to be.
Yeah.
That ultimately doesn't allow other people outside of your culture to come in and say, "Oh, well, this is a good movie because it." They also explain that, like it. I feel like in that way, it doesn't really help people outside of your culture understand why this movie is so good to you guys. You know what I mean? Like, because it has great reviews, and ultimately, I'm sure it is a great. I'm sure it is like that good. I'm sure I have a very very different viewing experience with it if I was with a bunch of people from that culture. Just because I'd have a better explanation probably from it. I'd be around people who understand it better, be able to tell me like, hey, this is why, this is what this god is about. This is why this god is treated this specific way. This is why they're worshiping the god this way. And this is how important it is. You know what I mean? Like, whereas everyone's culture is very different.
Anyway.
So, yeah. That being the case, even without that, I do feel like I did look up the first 30 minutes of it. Like, I did have time after the fact. It's been a couple hours, so I did have time to go back and kind of see what happened. I don't feel like there was much.
Yeah,
there was not much to it.
The first 30 minutes is all basically setup of, this is the whole initial setup of everything. Like the village worships this demigod, and then the king of the land trades the land itself to the villagers for good fortune, in the sense of like being happy with his family and everything.
Yeah, for the god to basically come back and bless the kingdom itself and his palace.
And then it shows the importance of going back on your word for that when the next generation guys gets killed, because he tries to go to court and take the land away from the villagers. So he's randomly murdered. And so I guess this is what's taking place is the third generation then.
Correct.
Yes, it's another generation of it. It's his ancestors that are doing it. Yeah, ultimately. Yeah.
Because the god is called the Punjali, which derives from the Hindi word of boar, and when they have the celebration of Kola, I believe that's what it's called, which you see in the three generations.
Right.
The priestess who is doing the ceremony gets possessed by the Punjali.
See, I thought it was. Is priestess both male and female? Because I thought it was a guy doing the.
So it was a guy because it was in that at one point in the movie it was his friend who. Did
I thought
that.
It was his dad who did the first one.
So the first one, but I'm just saying later on it was his friend that took it over.
Yeah.
And he was also, so.
And so the priest gets possessed by the Punjari, which I believe wasn't his name Kahara they unveiled at the end.
Yeah,
something like that in the song.
Yeah, because they said that they mentioned it at the start too, where it's like the demigod and then their other spiritual partner, who's like the wrath if you cross them, basically.
Right, and the priest would get possessed by said god, and then he would answer the questions of the village, show them insight, be like, "Hey, you guys are messing up in XYZ because of XYZ."
Yeah.
And so from there, when the descendant of the original king who made the deal tries to take back his land, the Punjabi basically comes out and is like, "Oh, if that's the case, I'm gonna curse you," and then he ends up being just dead.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. But yeah, it's like I felt like instead of 30 minutes, a lot of that could have been explained in 5 to 10. That was kind of my initial gripe with the movie, because this setup is important for the whole theme of the movie, And also, like, maybe I'm remembering it wrong. The imagery for the boar should have maybe been put in a sense, earlier. Because I was kind of confused as to why I didn't kind of get it till the end as to why the main character kept having dreams of the boar and why they weren't supposed to be hunting the boars in the forest. It was all symbolism for that, which it doesn't connect if you don't know that. So it's like maybe something thrown in the beginning would have helped.
Well, the thing that they don't do a great job on unveiling, but they give context clues due to the fact that like his dreams and nightmares. Shiva is the current main character's name. Which,
Right.
fun fact, Shiva is also the name of the god of destruction in Hindu.
Oh, that's
which
cool.
which is something I figured during the movie. I'm like, that's gonna play into this at some point, right? And it didn't, but that's okay because I was very confused. Like, is there a reason why they named him Shiva or Shiva? Because it's Shiva and Ganesh are the two main like Hindi gods that I've heard of. So that's where I'm like, okay, those might have something to do with this movie at some point.
And another thing too is that the thing about Shiva is that with his dreams and everything like that, and some of his background story, and the fact that his mom and a lot of the other villagers have been trying to push him to become the actual priest of the ceremony, and not I forget the name of the other gentleman, but his name was like a G or something like that.
Yeah, it was one of his friends though that he treated like a brother.
And so Shiva was being pressured to try to take on the honor of the ceremony. And that's because he is the little boy who chased after his dad, who was one of the priests in the past, the one that cursed the nobleman.
Yeah, it disappeared into the forest.
So the whole thing about him is basically like his whole family are apparently just priests, and their whole job is to basically take on the responsibility of Kula.
Oh, okay.
Which that's kind of like what they were hinting at throughout it.
Yeah.
Mind you, I had to do a little bit of research to confirm that. It was a theory I had, but it was true. And skipping to the end real quick, there is just a random insert of a kid, which is like, I guess their equivalent of a Marvel after scene, like after credit scene, which it wasn't. It was just a quick little snippet. And it was this kid who was asking a story about, who was asking a question about the story, because an elder is telling the same story to him. And that confirms that kid is also Shiva's son, which hints that kid's going to go through the exact same journey as Shiva and his dad.
Yeah, his girl was pregnant at the end of the movie. I remember that.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, okay, good. That's dope. She's pregnant. And then when I saw that, I was like, that's probably his kid. And obviously... So, what I felt was a really important part of the movie that I liked was it came full circle. Because I do want to bring this back to the review aspect of it, where I want to say that final ending battle was so good.
Yeah.
So entertaining.
It's
it was
kind of
genuinely...
I think most of our gripes is the next hour of the movie, where they spend an hour creating this conflict between the villagers and the forest. What is it?
The forest officers.
Yeah, where they're trying to protect the forest. That went on too long because it ended up not being the main conflict. Because it was important to build this rivalry as, yes, we're going to turn them around. They have to work together in the end, which I liked. It's just, it felt like, okay, we kind of just were doing things for an hour and stuff was happening without purpose. Kind of like Hardcore Henry, where stuff just happens. And we're like, okay, but why? And I thought we were going to get more depth from what's her name? I forget her name. The girl that Shiva ends up with.
I forget her name, but she also goes through training to become a forest officer.
Exactly, and I thought they were going to do more with that. I saw something interesting there developing, like they were saying to her, "You betrayed your people. How could you join them?" And it just kind of very quickly, once it's revealed who the enemy actually is, they just kind of all sweep everything out, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna make sure we fight the right guy now, because
it was an enemy of the enemy is my friend kind of thing.
Yeah,
and it didn't help that Shiva and his tribe are all very rustic and rural, and they don't understand the laws and why the laws are being implemented by this government that's like taking over the area.
I just feel I see what he's saying now. I feel like like for me, there was a big disconnect in this movie. I don't know, like I don't know what it was that it just felt like as it progressed, there were parts where they could have just capitalized on. That's a good relationship that you can go based off of. Like you said, there was that dynamic of on your first day as an officer, as a forest officer, you could have definitely you literally have them come here and you guys are cutting off our land basically and saying, oh well, no, that's not it. You guys are squatting on this land. This is not part of your land. You're basically betraying your villagers, like they said, right? So ultimately, like they could have developed that more. They didn't do more with her later, as far as that goes. That was a
Right.
missed opportunity. There's also the whole, like he said, building up the forest officer, because even, and I will say, I typically don't really care what the description on a movie says, but you should be able to get the synopsis of the movie before you check it and say, I'm going to go to Netflix and I see it says, Shiva and villagers have, it literally says like they have a dispute with a forest officer, and I get it. If you want to basically say, okay, well, we're gonna have a big turn at the end where the good guy who was helping him the whole way was actually the bad guy. I think that that's cool, and I think it could have been better executed. I just feel like I said initially, this movie really dragged on at parts that it didn't have to, and definitely could have used that time to better flesh out the actual story of he's going to get betrayed by this man. Because you didn't have to wait so long to tell us that the
Yeah.
landlord was the bad guy. Like you could have had him, you could have had us, the audience, see that he was the bad guy for a while, and see him being, yeah, basically
Ye-
using Shiva the whole
Yeah.
movie in a way where we knew he was using Shiva the whole movie. Because by the time it got to the end, where by that last 30-45 minutes, where, and yes, it was 30 to 45 minutes when left when they finally were like, oh yeah, he's the bad guy, and
Right.
his friend Garuva, was it Garuva, ended up dead. I was like, oh well, he was just in the car with the landlord. He did it, you know?
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, oh, well, we don't know who did it. And they're trying to make it seem all. And I get it. From their perspective, it's all suspicious. You guys could have spent a lot more time fleshing out the fact that he's a bad guy. Like, it went on too long. You made us think that the forest officer guy was the bad guy the whole time. And I get it. But, like, an hour, either shorten the movie by 45 minutes and focus more on that relationship, or flesh it out earlier so that way there's a longer period of time where the audience wants to be like, finally, kill the landlord. Yes, make us hate the landlord throughout the whole movie so we know that by the end of it, it feels right that you guys are just going to kill him at the end, you know?
I disagree with some of that, where it's like, the whole conflict between the villagers and the forest administration is good. I think what just needed to happen is it needed to be shortened, because Shiva, it makes him feel like an asshole at a lot of times early on, where I'm kind of like, I don't like him. I don't like him as a character. He just kind of is shitty to everyone, and he wants to fight everybody. And it's like, at the same time, I get it. He wants to protect his people, but it feels like, oh, okay, maybe we're gonna talk about how he's going about this in the wrong way or something. But that makes the turn really good, because the way they had the landlord helping everybody the whole time, it was done well, where I didn't suspect him for anything to ever be malicious in any form, which was done very well. So when it was the twist of, hey, I'm actually an asshole, it's like, oh wow, didn't see that coming. That being said, they could have done that in less time, because what they had was good. There was a lot in between that was like, okay, we don't need this, we don't need this, we don't need this. Because it's like some of the stuff where, okay, they almost kill the forest officer a few times, like him getting shot with the gun or the tree falling on them. A lot of the conflicts that happen is just showing that they don't like each other, which has already been done, and it just kind of adds more unnecessary events, because it feels like, okay, we're coming to a climax between these two groups when we're not. We're not building towards something with them. We're actually building towards another character, and we needed to get to that sooner. That's my opinion.
If I may,
Mhm.
there is also a little thing that kind of got to me, is that besides the pacing of the story, because there are parts which I agree, the Woodland Officer arc felt too long, and it felt like the arc for the true villain of the story was too quick. Like, everything just happened constantly. And it just, it was off-putting for me. The movie also has a really, really not that humorous attempt at telling jokes. I think I've only laughed, like, at one joke, and that was the grandfather's musket being passed down. They use it in the final fight. They all duck, and they shoot both guys with one musket bullet.
That was funny.
Yeah.
That was the only part that I laughed
great.
out of all the jokes. Another thing, too, is that the usage of some characters just felt kind of unimportant. Like, for example, when they're making Shiva seem like an asshole who doesn't care, because he genuinely did not care, he'd rather be drinking scotch and eating meats and just hunting, instead of taking on the responsibility of becoming the priest for his village. You kind of run into, situations where I believe the other guy who won the actual bike at the first Kola festival, I think that was his actual younger brother, or at least a close friend of his that was like a brother to him.
Right.
Who was like, hey, I won this bike, can you teach me how to ride? And then Shiva just takes it for the rest of the movie.
And never teaches him,
and never resolves it. And also, that character, he seemed like he was going to be an important side character, but he immediately gets overshadowed by literally everyone else, including Shiva's crew, who had more character development than his own little brother, who I was hoping would have done something to save him in the fight, or at least, help him in some way and mature on his own. Right. And that goes to the other guy who's slowly becomes a part of Shiva's crew, who's the one guy who, I don't know his name, but he's balding.
Yeah.
And he's just the Derek of the group.
Yeah, he's just constantly bashed for being ugly and not having enough hair, which I appreciated. It was humorous at times.
None of it really hit for me. It just was... Okay, that's a lie. The part I did love was when the forest officer was asking him why is he taking a plant from the woods. He's like, well, this helps my hair. I mean, you could use some if you want. I can show you where it is. And he just smacks him. Like, get the hell out of here.
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, I feel like it was just unnecessary characters that didn't need to be involved. They had no purpose in the story. Yeah, I get it. You'd want to add comedy to a movie to break the tension of it. But if you would have just focused on this movie being a drama with some tension and some action in it, I feel like I would have enjoyed it more.
I'd say the second half of the movie is the best part. This part of the movie on its own is really good. Did anyone see the twist coming?
Yes.
I had a feeling that that's what was going to happen, because at the beginning they hinted with the landlords, the people who own the kingdom, they pass it down via generations, and they hint at people going back on their word.
Right.
When I saw the new landlord, I thought he was actually turning a new leaf. I thought he was genuinely a good person.
Right. Me too.
But the moment that I could tell something was up was just how his body language was and how he is. He just felt very politician-esque.
Yep.
So fake. And of course, they definitely hinted at it when he stepped inside of someone of the family's domain from Shiva's friend, the priest, dying. Mysteriously, quote unquote. And when he stepped inside the house, that was kind of like one of those things where the landlord never steps inside someone's house unless invited. So it kind of showed that he was using his authority to kind of comfort them in a way.
Huh.
I don't know. I just could feel that there was something off about his character from the start. With the previous setup of the 30 minutes of, hey, lords of the land give land in trade of God and prosperity.
Right.
Then next generation tries to take it away. So that tells me next generation also plans to take it away.
Right. I thought it was going to be his right-hand guy. I thought he was going to be the one who turns on the landlord, because he was just shitty start to finish. So I figured he was the bad guy. But he actually turned around and tried to save the villagers at the end, and I was like, I didn't see that coming either.
That was the only twist that surprised me.
That was the twist that surprised me, because honestly, he was being a jerk throughout the whole movie, and even earlier, he's like, well, he went to the forest officer and was like, if you can make sure that the money for all the timber that gets cut goes to me first, so that I can actually get paid for it appropriately, then I can get proof that Shiva and his gang is behind all of this. And then that's when it led to him showing the forest officer to the forest, to where they were, and that's when the tree fell on them. And I was
Right.
like, honestly, at that point, I was like, okay, so he's the snake,
Yeah.
but so is his boss. Like, it was not a point in the movie where I was like, oh, the boss is such a wholeheartedly good guy. Like, especially with the hint at the beginning, earlier on in the movie, where they were saying, like, yeah, because of this, because I even watched the part where they were at the festival early on, and they were like, yeah, it's nothing like when we had our, when with our ancestors, when they got the agreement and they went from the, obviously went from the landowners to the actual natives, and I was like, all right, that's perfect. This sounds like the bad guy is going to be the landlord in the end. Like, they're setting it up the whole movie to be the landlord, and they tried to cover it up with the forest officers, and I was like, all right, but we're focused on the forest officers. I guess there's two problems then, and the landlord's going to screw them over in the end anyway.
Huh.
Look at that. Yep. Well, yeah.
Yeah. I think they did a great job, though, of making us hate him at the end. Like, they really brought him from 0 to 100.
He shot a child. That's when I was like, oh, he's actually a horrible villain. He's a despicable human being.
Yeah. Which, that kind of pissed me off, the way he died. That, I audibly went, what the fuck, and stood up and was angry. Because he's about to, like, chop his head off, and it just cuts to the title. And or whatever that was. I was just like, no.
Yeah, that was the title card.
It was a title, and then they showed the
I was like, no.
little kid talking about how they showed the festival with Shiva dressed as the god and whatnot. Yeah,
Being
Yeah,
possessed by the god.
Yeah, we needed to see him die. I wanted that satisfaction. Because he pissed me off.
Yeah, not seeing the death is kind of like, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do like how it did come full circle, like Carlos mentioned earlier. How it's like, oh, what is your demigod going to do? Your demigod's nothing. And he even tells his, like, own son, I believe that was his son, that the story of his own version. And just for the god to be like, ah, yes, I am here to end you. You need to pay with your blood for the soil. I think that was a very sweet ending to it.
Yeah.
But I do agree, if we would have actually seen the death instead of it being off screen, would have been a lot better.
I liked all of the fight scenes. Did you have any issues with them?
No, I love them.
Yeah,
the fight scenes were great.
all of the fight scenes were fantastic.
Shiva being high and drunk and going Ultra Instinct on the
It was-
assassins
yeah,
was
it
the
was like-
funniest and the best fight I've ever seen. And just the
Absolutely.
Smith is just like, don't fight in my store. There goes my store.
The last fight scene, it was so good, but the one thing where I just fucking died because I was laughing. He like when he's possessed, there's like this one move where he elbows a dude and he just like falls over dead, and then when he gets up, he like does this dance where he like forward backward shuffles, shifting his shoulders back and forth, kind of like half salsa, half the fuck is his name, McGregor. It's like somewhere in between the two of them, or I'm just like, what?
It was great. No, he elbowed him in the gut, like danced backwards, danced forwards, and then hit him again. And I was like, that's perfect.
I made Carlos replay it like 3 times because the first time I just was fucking dying laughing, and then every other time I was like, I love this. Everything about this is great.
It was so good. It was so good. It was so good. It honestly, for a period of time, I was like, that might have made this. It's a big reason I gave it a 6 initially.
Yeah, because
a
it's
big
like
reason.
the good moments are so good, but the bad moments are really low.
So bad.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to say on my end. I don't know if you guys did.
So no, same. I'm good.
Yeah,
for
I
it.
think I've covered everything I wanted to talk about.
All right, guys. So I'll start us off with our final, our final ratings. So after everything, like I said, figured talking to you guys would help a little bit with understanding it a little bit better. However, like I said, the highs were high, but the lows were pretty low.
Yeah.
I'm gonna actually drop this one. I'm dropping it from a 6 to a 4. Like
Okay.
I couldn't find too much enjoyment in it. I think that the highs were worth it, and I think like if I had just watched clips of it and only saw the highlights of it, I think this is one of the best movies. that I could possibly watch. It's gonna be a funny movie. It's gonna be hilarious. There are gonna be some great fights.
Right.
But the fact that I had to watch 2.5 hours of it, and there was maybe 30 of those minutes were solid highlights, that's not enough for me. I'm gonna go to 4.
All right, fair. I always put there's a big impact, like I said, of does it do something new? What was my experience from this movie? My personal experiences. I had I wouldn't say I had a more worse or better time, so it's gonna probably just stay average. I wouldn't watch it again, but I don't have a sour taste after the fact, and I still have fond memories, so it's still gonna stay at a 5 for me.
With me, the movie was just okay. It wasn't spectacular or great, and it wasn't like absolutely dog, like Hardcore Henry, that I just had a
God,
bad
that was
taste in my
awful.
mouth. I would really say that despite the pacing and how long the movie was, it just could have been done shorter and better, and you could have focused on the main villain instead of having like a hinting in the background, and just removing certain characters would have been better. And yeah, the sound quality was bad. When I say that, I'm talking about like the music in the background, and some of the musical songs were just not memorable. That kind of bumps it down for me quite a bit. But then what brings it back up for me is the quality of the fights. The fights were amazing. Shiva is he literally takes his name, his birth given name, to the actual like source of it, as he just kicks ass, either drunk or high. The moment he gets that fire in his eye, and I think it goes well with the choreography of the fights. The fighting was just overall good.
Yeah, I love
And the fact,
the one shot where he like spins 360 all the way around
yep.
from in the blacksmith shop. That was awesome.
And for him having this haunting of like the demigod constantly being in his dreams and trying to call out to him essentially to take what his legacy should have been.
Right.
I think that whole thing also keeps it at a 5 for me.
All
So
right.
there's downsides to it, but it still stays at a 5 because there was a lot of ups that keep it right there, like smack dab in the middle.
Yeah, I feel like 4 and below is bad movie, 6 and above is good movie, but 5 is just average, right in the middle. I don't hate it, I don't love it, so yep. Well, yep. Uh-huh.
Yep.
So whose turn is it to
Cough.
pick next week's movie?
So it's my turn to pick.
Great. Do you have one in mind already?
I do. I do have a movie that. So this is a movie that I've seen before, but it was years ago, and at the time it was one of my favorite movies, and I'm curious to see if I still enjoy it or not, and I'm also curious to see what you two think of it. It's a movie from the 90s. It's called Gattaca.
All right, well, join us next week for our review of Gattaca.
Alrighty.
Thank
Bye,
you, guys.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.